Today is May 30th, 2008, and this interview is being taken at the veteran's home. The veteran's name is Steve Jarmosco, and his birthday is on June 24th, 1945. His current address is 2524 Long Meadow, Grand Rapids, Michigan. My name is Erin Jarmosco, and this is my grandfather, Steve. The person who is recording this video is Flynn Hogue. What type of work did you perform in the Army, and where were you serving that work?
When I first went into service, I was given my MOS, which is my military job numbers, and I was classified as a machine gunner, and I was stationed at the time in Fort Meade, Maryland. And then from there we were shipped out to Vietnam in September of 1965. No, I think it was 66. Yes, 66. My job in Vietnam was out keeping the highways open for the big trucks to bring in their equipment, our supplies, and so on. So that was our job, to keep the highways open and traffic going.
Thank you. Where were you born?
I was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan on June 24th, 1945. And I am now, I'll be 62 next month. Nope, take that back, 63.
What was your family like? Your siblings, what were they like being around?
I was never really that close with my brothers and sisters because we were all 5 years apart. And we kind of more or less did our own thing. And I was involved in sports a lot as I was growing up. Baseball, whatever the sport was for that season, I was involved in it.
What were your siblings' names?
I had two brothers. Lenny, he is, he's how old is he now? He's 73. I have a brother, Dick. He's gonna be 69. And then myself at 63.
For your childhood elementary education, what school did you go to, and how was that experience for you?
I was probably somewhat normal for school. I was never a scholastic person. I went to St. Albert's grade school. For my whole 8 years. And like again, I played all the sports that were in season at the school. And I had a very basic, normal childhood. We all kind of entertained ourselves as far as what we did. It's not like nowadays with all the videos and stuff like that. We had to be more imaginative.
What was middle school like for you?
It was nothing fantastic. I mean, school for me was school. I was never a person that enjoyed going to school. I enjoyed after school with my activities and so on.
And high school?
High school was it was a lot different. Well, what was good about that, you went from class to class. You didn't have one class for 6-7 hours, and the classes that you went to were always in different rooms. So it added a little bit more of what can I say? A different atmosphere. And high school years were good years. I remember most of it pretty well, and had a good time.
Would you be willing to share any of your favorite stories from that time?
Well, there again, most of my stories are nothing super fantastic. Uh, my junior and senior year, I worked in a gas station, and usually you went to work when you're around 16 years old. And at that time of the year, you had to pretty well have money in your pocket. It's more so now, same thing. I mean, you didn't get nothing for nothing. So, um, in my freshman and the sophomore year, we're at the old St. Albert's school, and they had two years there, and then we would go to West Catholic. That was at that time was called it was West Catholic, and then you would go to either East Catholic, and at that time 1964 West Catholic opened up, and we went there as freshmen, and we were the first graduating class out of there.
Any pastimes that you and your family would do?
No, activities with the family was not that big. It seems like in those days we pretty well did what we wanted to do by ourselves. The family was never involved. My dad worked hard, and my mother was a person who was the strength of the family, and she managed the family. And my dad would turn a check over to her every Friday, and she would take care of the bills. And I think there was one sporting event that we went to when I was a kid. My dad drove us down to Detroit to see a Tigers game. And other than that, the family didn't really get too involved with each other. We were kind of on our own.
Would you say you're more closely knit with your family now than you were?
No, I'm closer to my wife's family than I am to my own. I'm kind of close to my brother Dick. We stay in contact and talk once a week at least, and tell each other about our aches and pains, and he enjoys staying at the cottage, boating and fishing and stuff like that for the summer. And I just look forward to the good weather.
Any favorite memories from your childhood?
I'm probably when my cousins would come over. I had a couple cousins my age at the time, and they were girls, and we used to harass each other and chase each other. And I remember one time that I was trying to run away, and I jumped off the ping pong table and hit my head on the beam, and had about 12 stitches put on my head. So, our activities were not mostly indoors. They were all usually outdoors, and running around and stuff like that. It was really nothing fantastic.
What were your original plans post high school?
Post high school?
Post high school.
Oh, when I was in the high school, I always wanted to become a professional bowler, and I did a lot of bowling. Was quite good at it. I was carrying about a 195 average, and when I was about 16 years old, and we get in tournaments and stuff like that. And my involvement in bowling was quite intense. I really enjoyed it.
When you were drafted, what were your original feelings?
when I was drafted, I was kind of shocked. It was a little maybe disbelief, and I wasn't ready to leave the house, and I just purchased a new Mustang, a 1964 Mustang, my first car out of high school, and that was my love. I enjoyed that car so much, and when I was drafted, I tried making payments for it when I was in the service, and making $65 a month was not big money to be paying on car payments. So my brother ended up selling it, which shocked me and provoked me at some same time. I wasn't too happy about that, but you had to do what you had to do at the time.
When you were drafted, where were you living?
I was living in my mother's house. They were somewhat gypsies. They would move around all the time, and I remember when I was drafted, I had a hard time keeping up with them because with the address, it was changing all the time. I rode home quite a bit. I was lucky. I had a girlfriend who I rode to all the time, and she was my strength.
Within your first few days of being in the service, how did you react to the change?
Well, you had to take a lot of orders, and you had to move fast. You had to obey the orders. I was somewhat intimidated by it because this was all new to me, and it was hard to take some of those orders because they were right in your face. They always trying to antagonize you, and you always wanted to break your spirits to see what you actually would do. And I listened. I did what I had to do, and after that basic training, I enjoyed the service.
Was there anything that surprised you, like the difficultness or it being easier than you thought or harder than you thought?
No, well, basic training was tough. I mean, it was something that I was never used to. With the activities that you had to prepare yourself for, and what they were preparing us for. You know, at the time we knew we were going to be going to Vietnam, and so our training was pretty well intensified. We had to learn things and learn them quick, and learning those things kept you alive.
What did it feel like being away from home for as long as you were?
Oh, it was kind of difficult. I mean, when you had something at home waiting for you when you got out, and so that was kind of mind-boggling. I mean, the service was going kind of fast at the time, and you know, we did our daily jobs. We kept our nose clean and never had a problem. Rank was kind of easy. I was promoted a couple of times in the short period of time I was in the service, and so keeping your nose clean was good. It was you were rewarded for it.
What was your boot camp experience like? And where was your boot camp
My
served
boot
at?
camp, we went when I was drafted from Grand Rapids. We went to Norfolk, Kentucky. No, Norfolk or Kentucky. And I remember my brother Len being transferred there when he first went to service, and talked about a hill that they had to climb all the time. They called it Misery Hill. And I received our orders, and I ended up in Fort Hood, Texas. That was a long bus trip. There we learned got our basic training. We were given our MOS, which was our training for the job that we would be doing after basic. And basic itself was tough. I mean, live ammunition being fired at you at certain times, and you had to learn how to keep your head down. Otherwise, you wouldn't last very long.
Do you remember any of the instructors?
Oh, I remember a couple of my sergeants, and they were very sharp. I mean, the uniforms were always just so, the shoes were always spit shine. Their appearance was always, I kind of looked up at that because it kind of made me want to be a better person myself as far as my appearance was.
How did you get through boot camp? Like, did you have a certain motivation or a certain goal or just anything that kept you going?
Motivation was, there was a lot of motivation because if you didn't go and finish your basic training and pass it and go on to the next job, you were allowed very few privileges. And I remember the haircuts that we had to get. Your hair had to be so short, very similar to what I have now, except I had more of it.
Where exactly did you go when you were told that you were going to Vietnam?
When my orders were sent down to me when I was in Fort Hood, Texas, I was told that I had to go to Baltimore, Maryland, at Fort Meade, and that was the 11th Cavalry. It was an armored division with your tanks and light armor, heavy armor. They had it all over there, and there we had to learn our job.
What was your job assignment? What did you do in the military?
That's where I learned how to use the weapons that they had. I learned how to use a grenade launcher, a 45 handgun, a M45 machine gun. And, those were the things were taught, and that's why we really knew we were going to be going to Vietnam.
How did you adjust to knowing that you were going to be shipped off instead of coming back home?
Well, they let us come home for a couple of weeks before we went overseas, and it was a very scary time. I mean, we were about 20 some days on a boat, which took our whole unit to Vietnam, and it was quite a sea cruise. Everybody was getting sick and coughing up their cookies because of the waves and stuff like that. And it was interesting, and just the day that we got here, it was kind of a relief because you knew that your job and your training was going to start. You had to learn how to keep your head down.
When you saw combat, what could you describe to us what goes through a soldier's mind at that time?
As far as the combat itself, we were, like I said before, we were there to keep the rooms or the highways open for supplies, and so we were always mounted, and we were on a personnel carrier. There was two machine gunners, a 50 caliber machine gun, which was the sergeant's, and then our driver. And we were at the highway sitting in that contraption, and we did a lot of night patrols, and that's where we had left base camp, and we would sit outside of our perimeter to make sure nobody was trying to sneak in during the night. And that was a little scary. You were on your toes when we were doing that.
How were your needs of food and sleep met during this time?
Well, we ate a lot of sea rations, and those were something else to get used to. I mean, some of the breakfasts had scrambled eggs that were probably 20 years old, and they're all in these cans and stuff like that, and it was just downright nasty. So, but there's guys that enjoyed that kind of eating, and we just swapped our cans for them, and we had different stuff. The biggest thing we liked down there was peanut butter and jelly, but you had to eat what you had to eat. And I dropped some weight because of not eating what we were supposed to eat. And sea rations were not the rich food I expected to have.
What was your state of mind towards the enemy?
You know, I really didn't give it that much thought about what they call them, Viet Cong, and it was, you know, you could be talking to one of them during the day, and then at night you're shooting at them. So it was, you're always on your toes, just because you just didn't know who your enemy was. And when we were all young kids, we used to come and ask for candy all the time. And we would give them whatever we had. And they'd come around selling pokes. I mean, it's something that we never had our hands on. And so it was, Vietnamese, their lifestyle was pretty prehistoric.
Within your unit, how many casualties would you say?
We arrived in Vietnam on September 21st, I believe. It was around that time. And our base camp was a base camp that we had to make when we just arrived. And it was it was just a big open field, and anything that was in our way, we had to clear it out so we'd have a good fire lane. It was not very modern. You know, you learn how to survive in the field. You take showers and clean yourself in the field. So it was not the conveniences of home.
Now, you were hurt in the war, so would you describe what was going on, what was going on prior or post that moment?
The day I got hurt was December 29th. That was 1966. We were, like I said, we were guarding the highway. And matter of fact, some of us were swimming in a creek. And then we were given a red alert, and the Viet Cong were in the area. So we loaded up, and there was about 10, 11 tracks, maybe, personnel carriers. We would leave our area there and travel into the rubber tree plantations where they said they were. And when we got there, you never saw them. They were very, very clever people. And the way they got around was underground. We used to call them the mole people. And so we found their tunnels. We had to go down in the tunnels and take whatever we could and find to see if there were any Viet Cong in the area. And we were fortunate. There wasn't nothing that we saw. A lot of their food was underground, which was rice and stuff like that, because they, like I said, they lived underground. So after looking for quite a few hours, we ended up packing up and going back to our highway. And on the way back, they planted a mine, and we were the fourth track in a column of about 11 of us, 11 personnel carriers. And the first 3 or 4 went by, and they nailed our track. They blew it up. It was a plunger type bomb. It was a 60-pound mine, and quite loud.
With that, were you awarded any medals, and how many?
Oh yeah, when I was in the hospital. It's when you see a war movie on TV or something, uh, Hollywood star or something coming by your bedside and giving out medals. And I remember the person that came and gave me my Purple Heart was I'm going back a few years now. It was Martha Ray, and I know you guys don't know her, but she was a person on television a lot, and a comedian, and of course at that time you were trying to heal, and you didn't really care about the medals, but it was something that I could always say that I met one of the Hollywood stars, and I met a few more when I came back to the States.
Exactly what medals were they?
They were just the Purple Heart, and the other one was the Vietnamese medal that were given to us.
Now, I remember talking, and you said that you had met one of the Supremes. Would you describe what was going through your mind at that time?
Excited. I mean, that was close to home. That was Motown. That was Detroit. And I kind of grew up with the Supremes. And they were a class act. And they came and performed for us at Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C. And it was quite memorable. And I even got a chance to kiss Diana Ross, which was something I'll never forget.
When you did come back to the States, were you relieved?
Well, it was shortly after I got hurt. I wouldn't say it was maybe 4 days before I was back in the States at Walter Reed. No, it was good to be back in the States, but there again, I wasn't that close to home, so.
When you were in Vietnam, did you feel pressure, stress?
No, because you pretty well knew what your job was, and the routine never changed. It was something that you were ready for, and if you weren't motivated, then you were in trouble.
What was the food like? You already described it, how it was like that, but was there any other
We
parts?
did get our warm meals in the field. I remember that when they used to make coffee, you threw the coffee grounds in the water and let the coffee grounds settle, and you drank out of your canteen, and they prepared hot meals out there, and it was not gourmet stuff, but it was enough to get you by.
When you were there any entertainers that would come along, or any nights that you got off from watching guard?
Yeah, there were some evenings that you had for yourselves. Certain times of the night, on certain days, we were allowed to have beer and then enjoy life a little bit, but you never were able to leave the area.
Did you keep in touch with your family easily, or was it more difficult?
Well, time was not always in your favor, so whenever you got a chance to drop a few lines, you would do it. I was never one to write a lot of letters, but I stayed in touch.
What did you think of the officers of your regiment?
I remember our lieutenant when he first came to our unit in Baltimore. He was a second lieutenant, meaning he was just in the service for a short period of time. I mean, he was just given his duties, his job, and we probably had more time in the service than he did. And a lot of times he was not much older than what we were, but got along good with him. Was a good man.
Um, was did you when you got back, when you were in the hospital, was there any like problems or like discomforts of being home but still so far away from home?
Oh, I remember being at Walter Reed. I was there probably 7 months before I was transferred out of there to Ann Arbor. But you know, when that newscaster was blown up in Baghdad, and he came home and stayed at Walter Reed, he brought back a lot of memories where the hospital was all run down and not the cleanliest place in the world, which you would have thought Walter Reed would be, since our presidents usually are taken care of there and everything. But it was not the grand hotel for staying there a few nights. It was. Geez, I almost lost what I was ready to say. I got sidetracked here a little bit.
Do you stay in touch with any of the other soldiers who were in your unit?
No, because since my stay was not that long, I only had 4 months in Vietnam, and so I didn't have that choice of leaving Vietnam with our unit after we put in our year. So you pretty well lost track of them shortly after I was hurt. I mean, I still remember them and everything. I've talked to a few of them, and I know I talked to my lieutenant who stayed in 20-some years in the service. And he always wanted to know what happened to us because we were the first casualties of our unit. And he always blamed himself for if there was something that he could have done to change the outcome. But there's nothing that he could have done.
When you were in the hospital, were there any veterans organizations that you could have joined, or did you join them later?
Oh yeah, most of your DAV and veterans of foreign wars and places like that, they would come down and entertain the patients. I remember some of the guys that were hurt and lost both legs. I remember it was just like them, a bunch of monkeys climbing their bed, and your attitude for survival. I mean, if you didn't let them try to beat you, otherwise they would beat you in the ground. So you had to have somewhat of a sense of humor. And a lot of guys that were hurt serious they took life that way. I mean, it was a terrible thing that happened to them, but if you let it get the best of your mind, and the outcome was not very good.
Did your military experience influence the way you view wars now, as the war in Iraq?
The problems with Iraq is that it's so much different than it was with Vietnam. You were somewhat out in the open fields and stuff like that, where you weren't amongst civilians, to where you would have to be more careful of what you're shooting at. It was, I think it is worse now in Iraq than what we had it probably in Vietnam. When somebody walks up to you with covered in dynamite and blows himself up and takes a lot of people with him, it's hard to stop those kinds of killings. They gave up their own life for whatever beliefs they had.
How did your service time affect the way you view your life or do things in your life, take things, and how did it affect your family?
Well, with my injuries that I had, there's a few things that I had to learn how to take care of myself. Being in a wheelchair, and at that time things were not very accessible for a wheelchair. That was a big thing trying to get used to. And when you weren't able to get into a building, or some crazy reason why the chair wasn't acceptable in it, now that was kind of tough. But there again, too, we didn't get that warm welcome like we with the parades and everything. Well, it was almost like our fault when we went down there in Vietnam. And good memories, bad memories, but the whole overall, my learning it was a different life for me. And with the attitude that I had, and being somewhat of a crazy person that enjoys life, I was happy to be here, and you just did the best you could and with what you had.
Now, when you got back from the hospital, once you were out, what did you do to entertain yourself? Like, were there things that you would do, or did you go out, have fun, like with any friends?
No, because when I got hurt, I just turned 21, and so I really never had the bar hopping and the things that you do when you just turn 21. It was more times than none. I had usually go with somebody because I wasn't driving at the time. And adjusting to that kind of lifestyle where you weren't sure, you couldn't do things by yourself because your injury wouldn't let you. And for that, it was kind of tough. But I adjusted.
When you decided to start your family, what was your motivation with that?
Well, with my wife, that she was 14 years old when I started going with her. And she was my motivation. She kept me on a straight and narrow. I never got down when I was with her. Always felt good. She stood by me, and I was very fortunate that we ended up getting married. And next February it'll be 40 years. So I'm very lucky with that. Because of the injury, I was not able to father any children. So we adopted two. Andrea was our first. She was 6 months old when we got her. No, 5 weeks, I'm sorry, 5 weeks. And that changed your lifestyle. I mean, your life was not your life anymore. It was somebody else that you had to take care of. And so we had motivation with that. And we know each day would be different.
When did you get Uncle Steve?
We got our son when he was 6 months old. When we got him, it says he's part beaver because he used to eat all the wood around him, his playpen and his bed. He had a set of teeth though. He would just gnaw on everything. He was a handful. Typical boy growing up.
Raising children, what did you do with family time, vacations, weekends, holidays? What were those experiences like with a family?
Not doing much with my family when I was growing up. As far as activities and going somewhere, we always made sure that we did something. We would go stay at a cottage for a week, or we went all through the amusement park, Cedar Point, Kings Island. We were fortunate to go to Disneyland in California. No, I'm sorry, in Florida. So every summer it was something that we did as a family with the kids. We did something for either a week or 2 weeks, and it kept the kids motivated. It was a good time. We always went with our best friend and his wife, who was my sister-in-law, and we ended up marrying. We used to hang out together, and we ended up marrying into the same family. So we had anything and everything we planned, usually planned around them also. So, but we kept the family entertained.
Being injured, how did you get into tennis?
My sister-in-law one day was listening to the radio, and she called up and says that they want people in wheelchairs to come down to Riverview Racket Club, which is a tennis club, and they were giving demonstrations of how to play wheelchair tennis. And I thought it was kind of interesting, so I went down there. They stuck a racket in my hand, and I was playing for 16 years or so. It was probably one of the best times of my life as far as I really enjoyed it. We had tournaments that we traveled to. I learned a lot. Just being able to get around by myself, not dependent on somebody. I mean, we went to Florida, we went to California tournaments, and did a lot of traveling, and we enjoyed it. It was a good part of my life.
Are there any experiences that stick out the most to you or that are the most memorable from your time of coming home and so on to now?
No, probably the most things that I regret most was probably the 13 months straight in the hospital. That was a long time. I spent 7 months at Washington, D.C., and then spent 6 months in Ann Arbor at the Veterans Hospital over there. And I have a few stories that with the medical part of it. I lost a kidney. And it was because of the doctors there in Ann Arbor. It's, you hear those war stories about taking care of the veterans and stuff like that. Most of it's true. And for that reason, I never went back to Ann Arbor after 1970. I usually went to civilian doctors and take care of me. And so there's some bad stuff that I usually don't talk about, but there again, that's life. Can't let it beat you.
Any best memories?
Oh yeah. As strange as it is, it's Ann Arbor. I had a sore on my butt called a bed sore, and it's what happens when you stay in one position on your butt too long, and the area gets festered, and sooner or later you got a big hole in your butt. And for that reason, I was on. They used to put us on these litters, and we would be on our bellies with two canes racing down the hallways. I mean, we made do with what we had, and there was always some kind of motivation to. If they said no, you couldn't do it, we did it. 6 of those months in Ann Arbor were quite memorable. I mean, I met a lot of guys who were hurt seriously and were in wheelchairs, so it was a good time.
Any from after coming home from the hospital?
Pardon me?
Any from coming home after the hospital?
I was married in 1969, and I had a lot of different times where I had to go back to the hospital and for certain things and get fixed, and it was never a grand time to go back because I was just shortly married. And I think 2 months after I was married, I was back in the hospital for 6 weeks, where I had to have my arm fixed and a plate put in it. And, now it was good to be away from there. If you stayed healthy, you didn't have to go to doctors and stuff like that. But, good thoughts, bad thoughts.
Anything else you would like to share about your experience or life after or before?
No, the way the life turned out, I have no regrets. I mean, I've lived longer than what they said that most people in wheelchairs lived. And at that time it was what they said, 25 years. And I've got 42 years in this chair, and it doesn't seem that long. But there again, it's even hard to remember sometimes when you're able to walk what life was like. So I adjusted quite well. I mean, I said before, you have to have a sense of humor to be in a wheelchair. And being my granddaughter, you know I'm a little nuts. So, no, life's been good. I've got a good woman, good kids, and one lovely granddaughter.
All right. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for letting me talk.
You're welcome.
The following oral military history project is a series of documentaries in association with the Lowell area men and women who proudly served and sacrificed part of their lives to preserve the opportunities for all of us to build our businesses and raise our families under a blanket of freedom. For reservations and more information, contact the Lowell Area Historical Museum at 616-897-7688.